This episode is supported by Manscaped. Manscaped have kindly agreed to continue sponsoring the podcast. You can use our promo code GTM to receive 20% off all products and free worldwide shipping. If you've not heard of Manscaped before, they're now the leading company in male grooming. Their products range from face razors to nose trimmers and their famous Lawnmower 3.0, which is a product specifically designed for in and around your nether regions, so you no longer have to worry about snagging the bag. As a listener of Go in the Match, you get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with our promo code GTM. Head over to www.manscaped.com to have a look at all their range of products to grab yourself an absolute bargain. Welcome back to the Go in the Match podcast. I've been wanting to do something a little different with the podcast recently and come away from that matchday experience. In light of the Champions League quarter-final draws, I thought it would be really interesting listen to get a range of reviews from up to 15 different individuals from each respective club with their thoughts on the draws and how they've seen the campaign go so far for their club. We'll begin with Man City facing Dortmund, in which you'd imagine is going to be a try before you buy for Erling Haaland. First of all, we have ESPN reporter and Dortmund fan Uli Hesse to give us his thoughts on the draw, followed by writer Harry from Over the Line Football and City Extra, and then finally with a review from Kurt from Man City Fan TV.
Well, this is the worst possible draw for a Dortmund fan, I would think. Number one, Man City are, as far as I'm concerned, the best team left in the tournament, and they're very probably going to win the Champions League this year. But number two is, well, actually, I would have preferred to play any other team for various reasons. You know, Liverpool and Chelsea would have been really, really good, really a lot of fun, you know, because of the Klopp and Tuchel angles. And I think a team like Real, we've always done well against Real, you know, historically, so that would be nice. But Man City, that's really going to be probably too tough for us. I mean, I've seen them against Gladbach. Well, I've seen them a couple of times this season, of course. But I followed those Gladbach games rather closely because of, well, you know, because the Gladbach coach is going to be the new Dortmund coach. And his name is Marco Rose, and he was really, really, I mean, he's one of those coaches who really does his homework, you know. So he knew exactly what Man City would be like and the way they would be playing. And still he was, you know, really almost shocked after the game at how good they were. So yeah, from a footballing point of view, it's not a good draw because I think we would have had a chance to progress against the likes of Porto, even Liverpool or Chelsea. And it's also that, you know, we've played Man City a couple of times. So as a fan, I would have, you know, just liked to. I mean, I can't even recall the last time we played Chelsea. So as a fan, that would have been my number one choice probably.
Hi everyone, Harry from Over the Line Football reacting to Manchester City drawing Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League quarter-finals. First of all, I've got to say from a City perspective, this is a really tasty draw. I think for too long, City have drawn teams in the quarter-final. I don't think they need reminded who they were. Lyon, even Monaco at the time. That are kind of dud games where City were expected to just kind of steamroll the team and kind of move on to the semi-final, and the team seemingly took the foot off the gas and have slipped up in them games. I think Lyon was kind of a prime example of what's been happening at City for the last couple of years, especially in Europe. So with Borussia Dortmund, which poses a serious threat, you imagine that the lads will be right up for it. And there's so many stories that you can bring from this game. None more so, you'd say, than the case of Erling Haaland maybe auditioning for Manchester City for next season with the heavy interest that they've got. But, you know, his undeniable quality and he's amazing, especially Champions League goal scoring record will be a problem for City's assured backline, who's kind of had a new lease of life this season. Ruben Diaz has come in and has been brilliant and has kind of shored it up, but John Stones has been an absolute revelation, and the fact that he's keeping what was quoted as the second best centre half in the Premier League for the last couple of years out of the team at the moment is just a credit to himself. Add to that the quality we've got on the right wing back position in João Cancelo, maybe an underrated player on the left wing back as Alexander Zinchenko, Kyle Walker as well, kind of in reserve for the pace that Borussia Dortmund might possess. We're going to go into that with a really solid base, and then going forward, you know, we've got kind of undeniable quality. Not just Erling Haaland's story that might pique people's interest. But the one surrounding Jadon Sancho, obviously his fitness at the moment may be in doubt, but if he is there, he'll be returning to the Etihad to showcase just what City missed out on when they sold him a couple of years ago. On City's end, injuries permitting, they just seem to be steamrolling their way through the season. All 4 trophies seems mental, but it's a distinct possibility at this moment in time. Champions League quarter-final to come, an FA Cup quarter-final to come at the weekend, a Carabao Cup final already in the bag, and the Premier League 14 points from being secured again. So we're still in for a shout, which seems crazy, but we are. And the switcher system this season from Pep Guardiola has kind of paid dividends and has allowed some players that you've not seen in the past to express themselves. None more so than Ilkay Gundogan, 15 goals in all competitions for the German, who obviously is returning to his former club too, scoring a Champions League final goal with them under Jurgen Klopp in that amazing Dortmund team. He'll be right up for it, and City's seemingly strikerless formation with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Riyad Mahrez, Phil Foden, Raheem Sterling, just to name 6 or 7, has proven to be massively successful. And lastly, Pep Guardiola will know that he'll be judged on Champions League success overall at Manchester City. His league dominance has been brilliant, and for a City fan that is enough. But if he wants to be seen in the eyes of the media as a massive success at Manchester City, he'll know he'll have to bring some Champions League glory, and he'll be hopeful this season with the team that we've got that he'll just do that. A tie with either PSG or Bayern Munich awaits in the semi-finals, but Manchester City fans will know, especially from last season, that we shouldn't be looking anywhere past Borussia Dortmund at this moment in time.
Hello, this is Kurt from Man City Fan TV, and I've been kindly asked by the people at Going to Match podcast for a review of the Champions League draw versus Borussia Dortmund and how the campaign has gone for City so far. I'd like to start off by saying that our Champions League campaign this season has been almost perfection in terms of our results. We've topped out our group, winning 5 games and drawing 1, while scoring 13 goals and only conceding 1 goal in all of the group phase games. Then we had comprehensive victories in both of our legs in our last 16 tie versus Borussia Mönchengladbach, finishing both 2-0 in both of those games. This is the most comfortable City have ever looked in the Champions League, in my personal opinion, with an exceptional group phase. As I said, only conceding 1 goal in all 6 matches. We had Porto, Olympiacos and Marseille in our group, so not exactly the most difficult in terms of fixtures, but in terms of the control we've had in those games, I think it's absolutely been exceptional. But in regards to the quarter-final draw with Dortmund was the team I personally wanted to get. They're not having their best domestic season, while City in contrast are flying high. We're in the final of the League Cup, we're still in the FA Cup, and we're looking to take home yet another league title. But as we all know, form goes out the window in knockout rounds, especially in Europe, and Dortmund's counter-attacking style might cause us problems over the 2 legs. But I don't see anything other than a City victory over the 2 legs, in all honesty. Dortmund are a side that obviously is a strong team, but in regards to the teams left in the competition, they're probably ranking the bottom 2 or 3, so as City fans, I don't think we should be too unhappy with the draw at all. Looking forward, if we do manage to get past Dortmund, obviously we're looking at PSG or Bayern Munich in the final, semi-final. If we get either of those, if we manage to get through Dortmund and play either of those teams, it's going to be tough. Any game in this part of the competition is definitely tough, and I think City have done an exceptional job in the Champions League this season. Very, very comfortable, and I'm really excited for the upcoming rounds, and I'm only hoping for City victories, but thanks for your question, guys. I hope I've answered that nicely, and cheers again.
We then have a rematch from last season's final with the European champions Bayern Munich coming up against last season's runners-up Paris Saint-Germain. Firstly, we have a review from BT Sports, ESPN and the Totally Football Show's football expert Julien Laurens, followed by Lee Davey, a writer for Ligue 1 and Get French Football News. To then cover Bayern Munich, we have Florian Plettenberg, a reporter for Sport 1 in Germany, and Bayern blogger Mark from the United States.
I think this is the worst draw PSG could have had. That was the one they really wanted to avoid with Manchester City, but I think even more Bayern Munich because of the final of the Champions League that happened in August. I don't really believe in the whole theory of, this is a time for revenge. I think psychologically it's a defeat against an incredible team. And I do wonder if PSG can go into this game already thinking about that defeat. And I'm not sure how they can use that. So I really think this was the worst draw possible. Of course, PSG have some qualities and some assets to cause problems for Bayern, and we saw it in the Champions League final already. You know, if PSG had taken their chances, they would have been 2-0 up at half time. They ended up losing the game because Bayern were more efficient and maybe more solid, and they had Neuer in goal, who made a big difference on everything that he saved, especially the big chance for Kylian Mbappe, although it was more of a pass from Mbappe than anything else. But you know, with the pace up front, you could exploit their high line for sure. You'll have to be very strong in midfield against Goretzka and Kimmich. We saw Danilo Pereira playing really well against Lyon on Sunday night. He will play against Bayern because Paredes is suspended for that game. So you know that Danilo will play probably with Gay to have that kind of intensity and the activity in midfield, and Marco Verratti to be the creative player with Neymar, and then Kylian Mbappe up front with Moise Kean or Angel Di Maria. It will depend. But it's a huge task, obviously, over 2 legs to beat this Bayern side. It's not impossible, of course not, but it's a big ask. And when you think that you probably have to face City in the semi-final, then it's even more daunting, I guess. But they will believe, and certainly with belief you can achieve anything, and self-confidence, which they will have too. Let's hope that Neymar stays fit. Let's hope that everybody is fit and ready for that game. They will play Lille on the Saturday before the first leg in Munich or wherever it will be played. So that could be a good rehearsal in the kind of high performance, high intensity kind of rehearsal you want against Lille for the Bayern game, even if Lille are not obviously as strong as Bayern. But still, I think it's good to play a game just before with a lot of stake in the league. Very important, because if you do well and win well and play well, that's a huge confidence boost before facing Bayern 3 days later. So let's hope that's a good start. When you come back from international duty, you have got that game against Lille for PSG, and then you can focus on Bayern. And for neutrals, I think it's an incredible tie. Those 2 games will be fantastic to watch, and for me, I think I'd be far more stressed than anything else, really.
Hi, I'm Lee Davey, and I will be talking about the Bayern Munich against Paris Saint-Germain Champions League quarter-final. Really interesting draw this, because I think for both teams, because it was obviously a repeat of last season's Champions League final, which was only back in August. So for PSG particularly, the feeling will be very raw, and they'll certainly want to prove that they can beat Bayern and get over the line this time. PSG have definitely got the weapons to exploit Bayern's high line, and certainly with the likes of Mbappe and Neymar and the addition of Moise Kean, they certainly will pose some problems to Bayern's backline. On the other side of things, I think that Bayern certainly will have be in the ascendancy when it comes to the midfield battle, just because they are far more powerful, far more creative than PSG's very one-dimensional midfield. PSG will hope to have Verratti, as he's the only one really that can offer something, slightly different to what the other midfielders can. But that would hinge on staying fit, and obviously his disciplinary record hampers PSG at times. If PSG beat Bayern, then certainly the belief will filter through the squad that they can go on and lift this season's competition. But if they lose, then, they would have they certainly would have lost to the best team in the world. So in regards to that, it's almost like this is the perfect tie for PSG. On paper, you think it's the hardest, and it probably is. But PSG have shown when they've had their backs to the wall this season, they've been able to come out fighting and pulled off some fantastic performances, especially away from home at Manchester United, at Barcelona, and also that home game against Leipzig, which it really was backs against the wall for most of the game. it's not been pretty this season in the Champions League. It's not been pretty at all. It's been very, very difficult. Some of the games have been a bit drab, and PSG have certainly not had it their own way, and somehow came on top of the group after losing that first game against United. But yeah, it's been a tough season, but PSG are where they are because they deserve to be, and they've performed at the right times and got the results when they needed at the right time. I'm not sure if playing the away leg first will really help PSG because PSG's home form in the Champions League hasn't been fantastic this season. So that second leg I expect at the Parc des Princes to be really tense affair. The first leg I think will be tight. Maybe Bayern might go into that second leg a goal in front, but certainly if PSG can get that home form back to something where it was a couple of years ago, where there was a little bit of fear and trepidation for away sides coming to the park, I think that maybe they might be able to just squeeze through. It'll be tight, it'll be tense, but I think PSG are going to have to play really well for the two legs. Unlike the situation against Barcelona in the round of 16, PSG are going to have to be really on song for both legs of this. I expect to see a great tie. Looking forward to it, and I'm thinking PSG might just nick it.
Hi Mike, best regards from Germany. It's a pleasure to speak with you about Bayern Munich. Well, the Champions League, this is the tournament the players love and like. This is the tournament the players trained for at FC Bayern. And to defend the title, this is a big dream of the players. No one has achieved that in the actual squad. So this is the big aim, the big topic in the club. And they have been the best team in the last couple of months in Europe, to my opinion. And for sure, it's a very difficult season because of Corona. But Bayern Munich has a very good squad. They have lost quality with players like Thiago, but the core of the team with Sané, Gnabry, Goretzka, Kimmich, and in the defense with Süle, with Boateng, and for sure with Neuer and Müller is very, very good. It's a very high quality, and all these players, they want to defend the title. No one has achieved that in the actual squad of Bayern Munich, and Hansi Flick is the right coach and the right experienced guy for this title. This is the cup the players wake up for, and I'm really convinced that they can defend the title. The group stage was very, very good of the team, and you could see it. If they struggled in the Bundesliga, it hasn't had an influence of the Champions League. In all of the matches, they were very focused, very surprising with their appearances, and they played very, very well. And now against Paris, well, it's a big, big, big opponent. They have faced Paris in the final in Lisbon. It was a very balanced match, but Bayern Munich has won, and they are warned for Paris, and it's a very, very good team, but I'm convinced that Bayern Munich will come in the final, and they will win the final, because to defend this Champions League title, I said it, that is the big, big aim of the club and of the players.
While I'm obviously biased, Bayern vs PSG certainly appears to be a highlight quarterfinal draw, even in a year that has really good draws all around. It's a repeat of last year's very close final. However, a fair amount has changed between these two sides. PSG don't feel quite at the same level as they were last season, given some players moving on, bringing in a new manager, and injury issues, which has culminated in them being 3 points behind Lille and Ligue 1. Bayern as well have struggled to reach the same heights as last year. Fatigue and injuries have certainly played a part in some of those struggles, and notably they crashed out of the DFB Pokal against Bundesliga 2 side Holstein Kiel. The primary issue most people will point to is the back line, which has allowed goals at a rate not seen in nearly 3 decades. Fortunately, Manuel Neuer has continued his incredible form and has rescued them more times than I can count, but it's clearly the biggest Achilles heels for this team. Joshua Kimmich and Leon Goretzka are vital to Bayern's build-up play and pressing, and are really irreplaceable in the midfield. All of the primary wingers seem to be getting back to health and form at a fortuitous time this year. Leroy Sané especially has started to show just how good a player he can be over the last month. Serge Gnabry is really getting back into form after a few injury concerns, and Kingsley Coman has taken a huge step forward this year in terms of his play. Thomas Muller remains a massively important figure in the offense as his link-up play, especially with Robert Lewandowski, has been incredible. Lewandowski himself remains in tremendous form as he pushes to break the previously thought unbreakable Bundesliga record of 40 goals in one season. And there's a feeling amongst Bayern fans that this team has another level that they can simply turn on whenever the moment suits them. Every time we watch them play and it looks as though they're struggling or might be about to face an opponent that is too much for them, they seem to just flip a switch and look like we're the world beaters that they were last season once again. While I think this is likely to be a close tie, I'm reasonably optimistic that Bayern will advance. There are several teams that could certainly knock out Bayern this year, depending on how things play out. PSG is amongst them, alongside Man City, who they very well might meet in the next round, and Liverpool, who is a potential final opponent. As with any year, it will all likely come down to fitness and form. Still, I think Bayern has as good a shot as any of coming out on top, so long as they are healthy and play well. On paper, whoever comes out of this side of the bracket will certainly have earned their place with 3 of the overall favorites in one side. Regardless of the outcome, however, these all should be very entertaining matches, and I'm really looking forward to what should be an exciting conclusion to the Champions League this season.
We then have a rematch from the 2018 final in Kiev, 6 times champions and my team, Liverpool FC, up against 13 times champions and the most successful team in the competition, Real Madrid. We have 4 reviews on the Reds, beginning with The Athletic's James Pearce, Premier League accredited writer Kiefer MacDonald. We also have a review from author of the book We Had Dreams and Songs to Sing, Keith Salmon, and finally Match Going Red and one of my good mates, Ryan Dean, with his review. To cover Real Madrid, we have a football journalist in Madrid, Ewan McTeer, Mark from La Liga Expert, and finally followed by Scott Martin, a senior analyst at Total Football Analysis.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic Champions League draw for Liverpool. I think really you wanted to avoid Man City, avoid Bayern or PSG. And the fact that all those 3 are in the other half of the draw, I think that really does open up the road to Istanbul, of course it won't be easy. Real Madrid have had their problems this season, but they're still more than capable. But I think Liverpool have got a real chance. I think obviously the big concern for Liverpool in terms of their Champions League hopes is that makeshift back line good enough when the challenges get greater and greater, and as well as Nat Phillips and Kabak have done so far, of course they're going to have to raise the bar even further if Liverpool aren't going to get exposed in the latter stages of the competition. But what I would say with Real Madrid is that they're not, I think they don't have a Haaland or an Mbappe. Yes, Benzema has been unbelievable for them over so many years, but he's not the kind to dart in behind, and he hasn't got amazing pace. He's a very intelligent footballer. So I think that doesn't worry me as much as I think it probably would do if Liverpool were facing some of those other teams that are left in the competition. And then, of course, if you get past Real Madrid over 2 legs, then it's most likely going to be Chelsea. And, we know from previous campaigns that, 2-legged semi-finals with Chelsea with a place in Istanbul at stake, anything can happen. So, just 2 absolutely mouth-watering games against Real Madrid. Of course, it will bring back a lot of memories of Kiev in 2018. I know just how much that kind of, that hurt a lot of people at Liverpool. I think not so much the defeat, but the manner of it. And in particular, Sergio Ramos's antics, not just on the night, but also the way he conducted himself in the days that followed with all the nonsense about how Salah could have played on and how Liverpool were just making excuses. And but the reality is, I remember being sat down doing an interview with Klopp about a few months after the final on the pre-season tour of America, and he described Ramos as a brutal wrestler, and there was no doubt in his mind that Ramos deliberately tried to take Salah out of that final by dumping him on his shoulder, and then similarly, Klopp was absolutely convinced that it was the elbow to the head from Ramos that triggered those very embarrassing mistakes from Loris Karius that ultimately decided that final. So those memories are still pretty vivid, despite the fact it's been 3 years since, and of course Liverpool have gone on to win the biggest prizes domestically and in Europe since then. But these are the kind of games that Jurgen Klopp will not need to motivate his players for, because they'll be absolutely desperate to put one over Real Madrid and avenge that 2018 final defeat. And I'm expecting two very big performances from Mohamed Salah as well in those games, and I'm pretty confident it'll be. I think over the two legs Liverpool can get the job done.
So it's been confirmed that Liverpool will face Real Madrid in the last 8 of the Champions League, and to be quite honest, it's a draw that I'm really happy with. I think before the group stage, personally, I was looking at Porto and Real Madrid as the two sides who you'd probably be looking to get, everyone will be fighting to get, because they are probably the two weakest sides left in the competition. But it's the last 8 of the Champions League, and each side who's in the hat is here on their own merit. They're not here by luck, they're not here by fluke. They've knocked out Juventus, obviously Real Madrid knocked out Atalanta, so they're two really good sides. But in the sense of Real Madrid, it certainly feels like their golden generation has certainly come to an end a couple of years ago. We saw them 2016 to 2018 win 3 European Cups on the bounce, and for that achievement alone, they'll certainly go down as one of the golden, European teams and one of the golden ages in European football as time commences. But I think, with the loss of Cristiano Ronaldo after that Kiev season, they don't have Gareth Bale anymore, who has been a fantastic servant to them, whether, the Los Blancos want to, admit that or not. They've still got, obviously, Karim Benzema, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, Sergio Ramos, Rafael Varane. So they've still got a lot of that side that did play in Kiev, but they have aged massively, and it's not the side that it once was. And we saw that, in Zidane's second spell in charge at the Bernabeu. He hasn't enjoyed the same success. Obviously, they've won La Liga titles, but you'd expect that's kind of the given for a club like Real Madrid, Barcelona, to be fighting for those titles year in, year out. And ultimately, if they don't deliver, it's kind of seen as a disappointment. But in terms of Liverpool, I think Liverpool will really fancy themselves going into this quarter-final stage. I mean, hopefully, Jordan Henderson will be fit for the second leg. I mean, Ozan Kabak and Nat Phillips will start to, grow game on game, something we've seen in recent weeks. Hopefully, Fabinho and Thiago can stay fit. And that midfield, the three of them, whoever it is, whether it be Wijnaldum or Milner or Curtis Jones making up the third man, we've seen that with Fabinho back in the number 6 role, that he's more controlled. The midfield just has a purpose to it. It has that intensity. There's more control in the midfield, and people know what jobs they're doing. We haven't got Thiago looking like he doesn't know his role. He knows what he's doing in number 8 position, but because of Liverpool's injuries this season, people have been mixed and matched. We've seen a whole range of different midfields. We've seen 18 centre-half partnerships, and regardless of what team you are, it can affect you if you don't have that same kind of core personnel week in, week out. Liverpool have gone from a side comfortably achieving 90 plus points for 2 seasons, and it now looks like they'll struggle to finish in the top 4. So from that perspective, I'm sure Real Madrid will fancy themselves, but it looks like now in the last kind of 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season that we're kind of going to see a bit of a settled side. It doesn't look like there'll be too many changes. Obviously, Diogo Jota's just returned from injury, it's given Liverpool a huge boost. His goal at Molineux on Monday evening was the difference between the two sides. His 10th goal of the season. And I think, when we look at the end of the season, and we dissect, the troubles and the tribulations of what was a crazy season, and we try and pinpoint where it went wrong for Liverpool, the focus will be on Van Dijk, the focus will be on Joe Gomez and their injuries. But I think, the injury to Jota is just as big, if not, hindered Liverpool more, because we saw for a period, and still, at the minute, Liverpool haven't got that ruthless touch that they've had in recent seasons. They've struggled to score goals. They haven't scored at Anfield in open play since the end of December. And Jota just adds that, impetus. He adds that fresh brightness. He adds, he just adds something different, and he applies that pressure to the front three, which they've never really had before, because their places have always been guaranteed, because it's been Divock Origi or it's been Xherdan Shaqiri, knocking on the door, and in reality, they're not going to dislodge any of the front three on a regular basis. So I think Jota and his return is timely, and it's massive for Liverpool. The international break, people could say, it's a bit of a hindrance for Liverpool and their rhythm, but Liverpool gone into the international break with 2 really hard fought wins against Wolves and against RB Leipzig, and it's something that Jurgen Klopp can take massive positives from. And I think this 3-week break until Liverpool play Arsenal, it'll just give Liverpool time to get players back fit, just have a bit of a recovery. I think in a normal season, you'd be itching at the bit to play again, wouldn't you? Because we've seen after international breaks how Klopp styles sometimes take a bit of a while to get going again and restart the engine. But I think just with the nature of this season and kind of the fast-paced intensity of it, and I think players just need a rest, and hopefully Liverpool will be able to kick on for the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season and go far into the Champions League and kind of dislodge whoever's in their way, and hopefully, fingers crossed, get their hands on that 7th European Cup come the end of May.
Out of all the teams left in the draw, you probably took Real Madrid as our favourite. Outside of Porto, and also getting Porto or Chelsea in the semi-final. That's a great route into Istanbul to win number 7. Real Madrid aren't the Real Madrid who beat us in Kiev. I think everyone talks about retribution and what Ramos did to Salah and getting our own back and stuff, but that night Real Madrid gave us a proper lesson in how to close a football match out, and I think we took that into our own season the following year, where we closed so many games out in Europe, where ultimately we won it in Madrid number 6. Yeah, Madrid aren't the Real Madrid you see. The struggle. If ever you want to keep it against you, it's probably Thibaut Courtois. Pretty average at best, I'd say. But they are riddled with quality, right the way through. Carvajal, Militao, Ramos, Varane. That's just your back 4 potentially, or 3 out your back 4. Casemiro, Valverde, Isco, Hazard, Cruz, Modric, Vale and Mendy. You got names tripping off the tongue, and up front you got Benzema, Asensio, and Vinicius Junior as well now coming to the fore. They've got names all over the place, but actually, are they a real team? They're probably as inconsistent as we've been. The great bit for Liverpool is that I think where we've been our best since Christmas is in the Champions League. We've been more relaxed, we played better, looked really good against Leipzig, scored great goals, and looked really positive going forward. So I think it's a good time to be playing them. They're inconsistent, so are we. We need to raise our game and stay tight at the back. If we can stay tight at the back, we need to shut Benzema out. We've got every chance of going through. It's just good that we don't have to head to Madrid once again. It seems like a second home. We now get, roll on Madrid and then roll on Istanbul again with a bit of luck. Up the Reds.
From my perspective as a Liverpool fan, I think we've had a relatively strong Champions League campaign so far. On paper, it could have been a tricky group stage, drawing the likes of Ajax and Atalanta. Everyone knows how strong Ajax have been over the last couple of years, notably missing out on the final in 2019. In that famous night against Spurs, Atalanta, again, another team you can't underestimate, only finished 5 points behind Juve in a strong Italian league last year, and narrowly missed out on reaching the semis in Europe. I think PSG had to score 2 late injury time goals in that one. So overall, thought we were solid in the group stage. I think out of the 6 games, we kept 4 clean sheets as well. And, with our defensive issues and injury problems we've had, it's a bit of a miracle, really. And, with our history as well of making life difficult for ourselves in the group, it was nice to progress with a game to spare. But I think the main thing from the group stage is the fact that COVID, unfortunately, ruined any chance that we had of finally going to Amsterdam. I think, if you were to ask any Liverpool fan what will be their number 1 trip away to do, it would definitely be Ajax. And then obviously we drew Leipzig in the last 16. Again, another team who can't be underestimated. They're only a few points behind Bayern in the Bundesliga. So, went into that one, probably confident we'd beat them. And again, we got the job done. We did what we needed to do, 2-0 on both legs. I thought it was 2 professional performances. Salah and Mane with both goals in each of the legs. But the main thing for me in that one is it's nice to have Mane back on the score sheet. And I think everyone knows how well he's been miles off at this season. So I think for him to get a couple of goals should give him a bit of confidence. And I think we'll need that to kick on past the quarters. And obviously in the quarter-final draw on Friday, we got Madrid. What a massive game that is. 2 European elite teams. Just a shame, obviously, the fans aren't going to be there to see it. But as a Liverpool fan, I was happy to avoid probably the big three. Bayern, City, PSG. So with our potential route to the final, I'm fairly happy with that. But let's take one game at a time. Let's not forget Real Madrid are a massive club. Still, they've still got world beaters in their team: Hazard, Modric, Benzema, Ramos. They've been there, done it so many times. But I think with the bookies, we're favourites to progress. And then obviously, if we do progress, we'll draw the winner of Chelsea-Porto. Personally, I think it'll be Chelsea in that one. And I'm confident we can get to the final. The only thing that worries me slightly is our defensive issues. Yeah, Phillips and Kabak are being brilliant, but when it gets to the latter stages of this Champions League campaign, are they good enough? If they're going to come up against the likes of Mbappe, Lewandowski, Aguero, those sort of players, are they good enough? I'm just not sure. But never write Liverpool off.
This Champions League campaign has been a strange one for Real Madrid. Although this era of closed door matches has been odd for every team, it's been stranger for them than most because, well, they haven't been playing at their home ground. While redevelopment work is carried out on the Bernabeu, Real Madrid have been playing at the stadium in their training ground in Valdebebas, and it creates an odd atmosphere. That was clear from the very first Champions League match of this season. They found themselves 3-0 down at half-time at home, or sort of at home, to Shakhtar Donetsk. They lost that game 3-2, and they struggled throughout the group stage, but a 2-0 win over Borussia Mönchengladbach on the final match day of the group stage put them into the last 16 and actually put them through top of the group. Then they got a relatively kind draw by getting Atalanta. That was still a big challenge, of course, but an Atalanta red card just 17 minutes in to the first leg of the tie. That helped Real Madrid massively. There's no doubt about that. They won 1-0 away, then 3-1 at home, and finished the job in style, to be fair. It hasn't been a smooth path to the quarterfinals then, but the most important thing from a Real Madrid point of view is that they're there. They went out the last 16 stage in each of the previous two editions against Ajax and Manchester City, so they've already done well to make it this far. And the last 3 times they made it this far, well, they went on to win the whole thing. The reaction to drawing Liverpool has been interesting. I think people know that Liverpool are having a tough season and aren't what they were this time last year, but in Spain there's an sort of mystical level of respect for Liverpool because of their history, because of Anfield, because of Klopp, what he's done recently. So nobody's underestimating Liverpool, but I think it's a good draw for Real Madrid. And even better for them is that PSG, Bayern Munich and Manchester City are all in the opposite half of the draw. So if they were to make the semis, it would be Porto or Chelsea. So it's certainly doable because we've seen this team, we've seen this coach, we've seen these players do it before. Casemiro, Luka Modric and Toni Kroos are playing some of their best football in years. So, yeah, watch out for Real Madrid.
So Real Madrid find themselves in the Champions League quarterfinals again. And I think overall they'll be pretty happy with the draw in that they've ended up on the other side to both Manchester City and Bayern Munich, who look like the best two teams in Europe at the moment. If there was ever a good time to be drawn against Liverpool in the Champions League, it's perhaps this season. I mean, clearly they're not at their best right now. They're losing a lot of home games in very strange circumstances. And I think Real Madrid also will feel as though going to Anfield in the second leg is just not that daunting a prospect at the moment with no fans presence. And they've also been boosted by the news that the first leg will take place in Madrid rather than at a neutral venue, which looks likely when the draw is made. Now, this certainly isn't a vintage Real Madrid team. It's not one of the best. It's certainly not one of the most exciting we've ever seen. But there is still a really strong spine there, going from Courtois, Varane, Ramos, Casemiro, Kroos, Modric to Benzema up front. There's still a lot of players who have been there, gone all the way in this competition, have won this multiple times. And it's also a team that has generally done the business in the big games this season. And they've had a lot of surprising defeats, some really poor performances. Their Champions League campaign started with a really poor
3-2 home defeat against Shakhtar Donetsk. They were 3-0 down inside 45 minutes against the Ukrainian side, who were actually missing a lot of players due to a COVID outbreak as well. And they ended up losing both games against Shakhtar, but beating Inter twice, winning their make-or-break final game against Borussia Mönchengladbach. And then they emerged pretty comfortably in the last 16 against Atalanta, winning 4-1 on aggregate. So all of a sudden, there's a bit of cautious optimism, I'd say, amongst Madridistas at the moment. And there's a sense that they now have an opportunity to do something in the Champions League this season, whereas certainly before the last 16 and even before the quarter-final draw, I think a lot of Real Madrid fans and perhaps even the players themselves didn't really believe they were going to be strong enough this season in Europe.
Heading into the quarter-final draw, Real Madrid really wanted to avoid Bayern Munich, Manchester City, and PSG. And it just happened to work out that all three of those teams are on the other side of the bracket. Now, looking at the four teams on Real Madrid and Liverpool's end, there's definitely no easy matchups. We've seen in previous years that even an upstart team like a Lyon or an Ajax can give the current powers some issues. And Porto's very much in that mold. So there are no easy matchups at this stage of the competition. So you really do have to dig a little bit deeper to see how the two teams line up. And that's where I think as Real Madrid looks at this, yes, it's going to be difficult. There will be a little extra motivation for Liverpool given the way the 2017-18 Champions League final turned out, especially with Mohamed Salah's injury at the hands of Sergio Ramos. But when you look at these two teams and how they match up, Real Madrid's greatest strength is just their defensive tenacity. They're still a very strong defensive team, especially when Ramos is in the lineup. You look at Liverpool, their strength is with the potency of their attack. Now, Liverpool's defense, especially without Virgil van Dijk, has shown that they are very susceptible to strong attacking moves from opponents this season. So I do think this is where Real Madrid will look at this tie and see that they've actually maybe got a leg up heading into the matchup. So the team is just starting to find its form. Players are returning to health. And we're starting to see a little bit of fluidity with the attack. So, yeah, again, not an easy matchup for either team. Zidane himself has said that the team will have to suffer, that this will be a difficult tie. They will have to perform at their best to get anything out of it. But again, that's true with any matchup at this stage in the competition. But when you look at the way these teams match up, strength versus strength with attacking tactics for Liverpool versus Real Madrid's defensive work, but then I give the edge to Real Madrid's attack versus Liverpool's defense. So this should be a wildly entertaining draw. I could definitely see Liverpool setting the attacking tone throughout the tie. But this will be really entertaining for both the fans and the neutrals as well.
Our final game to review is FC Porto versus Chelsea. For this match, we have a review from the Porto side of things from Pedro Miguel, a massive Porto fan, followed by a Chelsea review from Dom, a writer at the Chelsea Social.
I'm quite pleased we got Chelsea. I think Chelsea's still in a transition period where their players are still getting to know the manager and vice versa. In this phase of the Champions League, I don't think there's too much to choose from, and the big dogs are still in the competition, and Porto's obviously the underdog. I'm really delighted with how well Porto's been doing in the Champions League. Not so well on the domestic competitions as we are trailing for 10 points. In the past 2 seasons, we've sold a lot of first-team players, and to get to this stage the way we did, I think any Porto fan would agree with me and say that going through the last 16 was already a big achievement, considering we faced a team that on paper had a brilliant team. With the league being so far away from reach now, I think Porto will be trying the hardest to go through to maybe get less impacted financially. And extra money in the pocket wouldn't hurt in any means.
Hi guys, this is Dom Demang from the Chelsea Social. So just a quick review on Chelsea's Champions League draw against Porto. So of course, looking at the ties we've avoided, you've got to be pleased with drawing Porto. But despite that, it's not an easy tie, I would say far from it. I mean, you don't knock out Juventus over 2 legs without being a good side. And you look at Porto's league situation, they're currently 10 points behind leaders Sporting in the league, which is not really good enough for the reputation that they have as a club in Portugal. They're used to winning titles and trophies. And speaking of other trophies, they're out of their domestic cup too. They lost in the semi-finals, so the Champions League is all they really have to turn around the season, so their full focus will be on that. But moving on to Chelsea, do I think we have enough to get through the tie? I mean, yes, absolutely. I think you look at how our campaign has gone, and we had an overall good group stage, finishing top during a tough period in the league under Frank Lampard in the early stages of the season. And when the Atletico Madrid draw came out after the group stages, I don't think anyone would have expected the result that we had over the 2 legs against them. It was a dominant performance, to be honest. And it's a real testament to the improvement that Tuchel's brought to the side. Do I think Chelsea can go all the way? I mean, who knows? We won it in 2012 under much more difficult circumstances, so we'll just have to wait and see. But in terms of the draw against Porto, I believe we do have enough to get through the tie. And if you look a little bit further down the line as well, obviously we know that the draw for the semi-finals of the Champions League also takes place at the same time as the quarters. So Chelsea as a club, we know that we'll come up against, if we beat Porto, either Liverpool or Real Madrid, which I think we can all appreciate if you look at the other side of the Champions League draw, avoiding the likes of Manchester City and Bayern Munich, means that we're obviously on the more favourable side of the draw to get to the final. But it's important not to get too carried away at this stage. It's easy to plot your route to the final as if you're just going to walk through every game, but Porto's not going to be an easy tie at all. So we just got to beat the side that's in front of us, and then we can move forward. But it's a good time to be a Chelsea fan, and I'm looking forward to the games.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see us doing something similar to this again in the future, please let us know via our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, all at Go in the Match, and we'd love to hear any feedback you had on this. If you enjoy this podcast as a whole, please make sure you share, subscribe and of course, leave us a 5-star rating.